Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at Phase 2 of the MCU. If you haven't seen our video for Phase 1, go check that out. It was a lot of fun. The link will be in the description down below. We thank you guys again for all the support and love you've shown on the channel so far, and we're excited to keep making these. Alright guys, without further ado, let's get into the video. I feel like we're probably going to have even more to say about Phase 2 if I had to guess. There's some real bangers in Phase 2, and there's also some real stinkers.
First up is Iron Man 3, right?
Yes.
Yeah, where'd you put that one? I'm curious.
Iron Man 3 is in C tier.
Ooh, me too.
Oh, nice. All right, cool. I'm going to go ahead and put it there then, because we agreed on something finally. This first time we agreed since Iron Man 1. Pretty weak story. Horrible villain twist.
Ugh.
And horrible villain in general, I'll say. It's really, once again, it's only saved by the cast and the acting and the humor. That's all it's got going for it.
Here's the thing. The setup for its villain, the Mandarin, that setup was phenomenal. Like, I was terrified watching. I'm like, oh my god, this guy's gonna... Like, whenever this battle between Mandarin and Iron Man finally shows up, it's gonna be fantastic. But ultimately, I was let down because I was like, it's just a big joke. Which Marvel knows, because if you've ever watched that one shot, the something King, I can't remember what it is, but it's him in prison.
Yeah, the real Mandarins are still out there, which I think is such just a slap in the face to us in general that they had to even do that backwards sort of line of thinking just to fix the mistake that they made. I mean, that being said, when it happens, when you find out that the Mandarin is just Trevor Slattery, it's hilarious. To see like how he's talking the whole time, like he's a terrorist, completely horrified by all the things that he's doing, and he's super scary. And you see him flashing the rings, and you think like, oh, he's also he has magic rings, but no one knows. And then he comes out of the bathroom, and he's just some British dude watching soccer. It's just it's funny at first, and then you start to realize like, there's no way this is real. There's no way this is what they're going with, right?
So dissatisfying.
And then it's just canon. That's just how it is. The real Mandarin's still out there somewhere, and we haven't seen him yet. But we wasted your time for 2 hours.
Oh my god! You know who else was a waste of time? Was Rebecca Hall, the one that played Maya. She was just kind of in there as like an old flame. They kind of tried to do some burnt out love flame between him, Pepper, and her.
And that's kind of how his whole story has been up to that point anyway. It's all things coming back to haunt him from when he was
a dickhead.
Yeah, exactly. He has a one-night stand with this chick and leaves, but he's super smart, so he finished the formula for her, which is also just kind of like a slap in the face, like, oh yeah, I got what I wanted from you, and I'm also gonna throw you a bone here and finish this equation you couldn't figure out, you idiot. And,
yeah, bye, bitch.
But then he just makes this poor guy with the crutches go up to the roof and just stand there, and it's like cold and windy up there, and just seeing him go up to that roof and realize like Tony's not coming, he's just a dick. That kind of gets me behind him a little bit for when he becomes the villain later on. Yeah. Aldrich Killian is a good villain. The Mandarin thing just ruined the whole thing for me, I think. It made me not be able to enjoy the good acting and performance of the other villain that was in the movie, who had good motivation for what he was doing.
It's very true, because honestly, if they never would have thrown in the Mandarin bullshit, I probably would have jumped this up at least a letter grade, just because I think this movie has a lot good going for it. It just has a lot of shit that weighs it down heavily. Like, for instance, the one thing I really, really loved about this movie is following the Avengers, this movie has consequences even after victory. Like, Tony's experiencing anxiety in a form of PTSD when he goes through it, in forms of like insomnia even. He can't even sleep. He's building all these suits. Like, up to this point, he has 42 of them. And by the end of Avengers, I'm pretty sure he used like Mark 8 or 9. And the one that he has coming to him is 42, which is insane.
I think it was Mark 7 in Avengers.
7, yeah, that's insane. That's so many of them. Yeah. So there's like consequences following victory even, which if you think about it, there's not many movies that do that. There's not many like consequences that follow the victory. This character arc of Iron Man is fantastic. Who he is now.
Over the long run, yes.
Even by Iron Man 3. Another thing that was just thrown in here, and the company knew that it was a mistake after the feedback, was Iron Patriot. Like, that was just kind of a waste of time.
They even make fun of, like you said in the movie, you know, like, War Machine's better. Yeah, it's got good things and bad things. It's just that there's more bad things. The next one is Thor: The Dark World.
I'm just gonna go right ahead and say it. I put this shit in D.
Yep.
Yeah. There we go.
Awful.
That's a D.
You know what I love about this movie? His long, beautiful hair, and that's about it.
You know what? Yeah. Speaking of that, when he's washing up his clothes and everything, and he's like wearing that like garb or whatever he is, he has the hair flowing over his face. They couldn't have made this man more beautiful. This is probably the best they made Thor look, other than his short hair. If you're any woman out there and you have not seen this movie, it's not a shit movie, but I will tell you that you will be feeling some kind of butterflies as you watch this one.
Actually, I think women would like this movie more because Thor 2 has Spider-Man 3 syndrome a little bit, where it's like more about the love story than anything, and I really don't care about their relationship at all.
Not at all.
And the villain is just god-awful. This might be the worst villain in the entire MCU so far.
Oh my god.
Malekith?
I put that in my notes. Possibly worst MCU villain depicted in MCU films. MCU, what the hell? That's what I put.
Yeah, you wrote a question to yourself. Like, what were you thinking? I have awful villain, weak story, too much Jane Foster. They made her the main focus of the movie, and I don't appreciate that. It's a Thor movie. It's not a Jane Foster movie.
I guess
Thor 4, whenever she becomes the new Thor, that she can be the main focus. If she does a good job, I'll get behind that. She gets transported into this realm. The ether, I don't know if I guess you could say it infects her. And then for the rest of the movie, she's just like the thing that they're all fighting over. She gets Thor's mom killed. I'm blaming her for that.
I blame her 100%.
In general, it's kind of Thor's fault for not thinking with the right head. So Malekith is horribly boring. Not only does he not do much, he doesn't say much. Like the whole movie. I bet he says less than 100 words the whole movie.
Exactly.
That may be an exaggeration, but it's a very low number. You know what was really Curse? Is that his name? The big brutish one that they beefed up and whatever with that weird dark elf magic.
He was better than Malekith.
He was absolutely terrifying. Yeah. But he doesn't talk either. He's just some big dumb guy that they made, and he just like gurs. But he absolutely murders people, and that was terrifying.
Let me see, because I think I said something I liked about the movie.
I said I like Thor's hair. That's pretty much the only thing I can think of. Thor's hair. The humor was good again. It's always been good.
Yes, I preferred the less moronic Thor approach in this one because I talked about Thor being the dumb brute.
He's diplomatic now.
Yeah, he still has his funny moment, like when him and Loki are flying that ship and he's pushing all the buttons. But another thing is Loki and Thor have a really good chemistry in this movie.
Every movie they've been in together, they do a good job of making you believe that they're brothers who are estranged or have their differences. They still care about each other. Like even Loki, even though he doesn't act like it, he cares.
This movie was mainly a setup for the Reality Stone. Let's be real. That's all this movie was. It's pretty much just that Thor and Loki have a good chemistry. The one thing I take away from this movie, out of everything, if I think about it, when that vision pops away and you see that cell that Loki's popped in and all the chairs and shit is thrown all over the place after his mom died.
Yeah, when he's super distraught and he was just acting like he was fine.
It's fantastic. You see humanity to Loki for the first time. He actually does care. He just kind of has different views, essentially.
Like I said, there's good things to say about every movie. I'll keep reiterating that. It's just that there's too much bad stuff going on in this movie. You know what I will say is another good thing? Because I don't want to just keep ragging on all these movies. I want to say good things, too. Heimdall is...
Oh, my God.
Is he?
Yes.
He's a god, right? I don't know what he's the god of.
He's a god of my heart. Here's the thing. With Heimdall, I feel, and it could be wrong just based on you knowing the knowledge, but I feel that Heimdall could take Thor.
Here's what I was trying to get at. He sees the Dark Elf ships coming in, even though they're invisible. He runs up and stabs one in the side and rakes the sword down the side of it and blows up a ship by himself.
By himself! This man is a god.
He's extremely powerful, and I don't think they ever got to show enough of that.
No.
In Ragnarok and the very beginning of Infinity War, he just was running around and like helping people, and that's fine, but he didn't like do much fighting, and I feel like you gotta have that guy doing something. He needs to be helping you fight. I just feel like that's one of those like low-key powerful people that you didn't really get to see the full potential of, other than that one scene of him blowing up a ship by himself.
I agree. Heimdall is very underappreciated, and the man deserves credit. Idris Elba did that character justice. He did fantastic.
So yeah, Heimdall, always a plus. He doesn't get enough screen time or showed his full potential.
He really doesn't. But I appreciate every single time he's on screen. I will give him that.
So let's move on. We've talked more about the bad movies than the good movies, I feel like.
So what are we on now? Captain America?
Winter Soldier, yep.
Listen, I'm just going to start off by saying I put this in S tier. This is my absolute favorite MCU movie. I love this one so much. The conflict felt so real. It felt like it was almost impossible to overcome. Like, how the fuck is he going to win this? Like,
he's going to win, but he's also going to lose.
Yeah, he's going to lose so much. And like that also plays in part to Bucky. That whole conflict, everything with Winter Soldier, every fight in this movie, I can remember verbatim. I can remember every scene per shot of this movie. That's how great every fight scene was, how memorable everything was. It felt real. It didn't feel like it was overblown by CGI. When him and Black Widow and Falcon are fighting on that bridge and on that little freeway with Winter Soldier, every little bit of that felt real. It didn't feel like I was watching a CGI Cap fly through a bus. I didn't feel like I was watching a CGI Cap face against a Gatling gun. Out of all these 23 movies, Captain America Winter Soldier is absolutely my favorite, just because the antagonist was originally a protagonist that this movie has turned into an antagonist, and it's a big conflict in terms of the hero having to face that battle. This is another thing, I know I'm rambling, but when he's going on his little mission, he's hiding in the shadows with Natasha. You got scenes of him in like everyday normal clothes but holding the shield. It shows that Steve Rogers and Captain America are one, and it's not just Captain America, which is fantastic. I love that.
That scene where they're on the highway and the overpass, and they're all fighting. They're all three in civilian clothing, and they're fighting these people who are geared up with like machine guns. Like, you can have fight scenes in superhero movies where they don't always have to be in costume or whatever.
And it really feels like like an actual war zone.
I like it when the camera makes it feel chaotic, but not to the point where it makes you sick. It's like shaky cam, but not so much where it's like you can't see what's going on.
That also plays in part to the choreography, because that very first fight on that ship, it's just absolutely fantastic.
They really set out to make him look actually like how strong he's supposed to be. So they have him jump out of the plane with no parachute into the ocean. He climbs up the ship, and then he proceeds to just put on a clinic. The part where he kicks that dude against the railing, and the guy's legs at the railing, and then he flips over it. He kicked that dude so hard. I'm like, that's what you should be showing. Like, he looks so weak in the first couple movies. That's what you should be showing.
It goes in part to the Russo brothers. This is the first, by the way, I don't know if everybody knows this, but the guys that directed everything following this is their start with MCU. The Russo brothers have changed the MCU drastically.
So they did this one, they did Civil War, and then they did Infinity War and Endgame, I think is all the ones they've done, right?
Yeah.
Basically all the big group movies with multiple characters. Captain America is really the first movie that introduces a new hero and has multiple characters kind of all in the same movie, and then that kind of set the trend from here on out for a lot of the solo movies to have extra characters in them.
We can't end this with this topic without talking about the elevator scene. The elevator scene was amazing.
Oh, it chills. Before we start, does anyone want to get out? Because he knows he knows that shit's gonna go down. That's what I love. He didn't try to escape or get out of the elevator. He was like, okay, I know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna let the doors close, but first I'm going to give these guys the chance to get out if they want to, even though I'm outnumbered like 9-1. He's just the most likable character in the MCU, I feel like. He's the one that's easiest to root for out of all these heroes.
He's true to the heart.
Exactly.
He's not going to compromise himself. He doesn't go with herd mentality.
To sum all this up, I will say this is the best standalone MCU movie.
I agree.
Out of all
100%.
I say that because it's too hard to pick between all the movies when you have the Avengers and like the big group movies. If you group it in for all the movies, I think it could be tied for first. Let's see. Guardians of the Galaxy. I have this at S tier as well.
You have it at S tier?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm right there, pretty much. I have it at A. And the only reason I have it at A, Ronan, I felt was the second worst depicted out of all the MCU villains. There's no motive behind his actions. He's underappreciated by Thanos, I guess. He feels like the runt, and so, hey, I'm going to rise above you. I got the Power Stone. Fuck you, Thanos. I'm going to go ahead and wipe my ass with the Guardians. But I just didn't feel anything with Ronan. Ronan was just kind of there, and I didn't care about Ronan's goal. I didn't care about his motive. When he showed up on screen, when it was just him by himself, I was waiting for the Guardians and waiting for the next step and all that shit to show up because I didn't care about Ronan.
I can understand that. He's a little one-dimensional, but he is terrifying. The level of brutality that he goes to. He starts out that scene, he does that, like, they're getting him ready with that, like, ritualistic stuff. They put his cowl on, they give him his hammer, and he just smashes that dude's head. That kind of sets the tone, like, he's just the most brutal asshole out there.
But at the same time, yeah, he's a very cut-and-paste kind of villain.
He's mean, and that's it.
We spent more time seeing how Ronan gets dressed than seeing his motive, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely understand that. The rest of the movie, though, the casting, the characters, the humor, the different look and feel. Like, this is the first movie that takes place in space. You have Peter Quill, who I think is completely different from his comic book version, I feel like. In this movie, he's more of a comedic character. But it works. Chris Pratt did an amazing body transformation to get this role, and then he just plays it so naturally.
Which is so true, because other than Nick Fury, the only character I know that any material that followed this introduction was based around the character that was depicted in the movies. Now when you see Nick Fury, you're going to see a bald black guy that looks like Samuel Jackson. Yeah. That's like a better version.
I would change it too. Completely understandable. It's way better.
Way better.
And then you have Groot. He was my favorite character in that movie. That's how you make a character interesting without having him say more than 4 words. Malekith said nothing the whole movie and was just awful, but Groot says basically nothing the whole movie. He does say things, it's just that Rocket's the only one that understands him, and then you can understand from context sometimes what he's saying. The fact that you just have Vin Diesel just come in and record a bunch of different I am Groots, it's amazing to me anyway, that like that's just such a cool thing. Like, they could have easily just phoned it in and just had some generic voice for him.
Anybody.
But they had an actual actor, a big name actor, record his voice, and in a bunch of different languages too. He's such an interesting character. He has such a different look and set of like abilities. He can manipulate and grow different parts of his appendages and grow them back, and you know, as long as one of his spores survives, then he can grow back as well. Such a good character. They did such a good job designing him and everything.
Yeah, Groot was fantastic, and like you said, he had 3 words that was said differently through the whole movie, but still had more depth than a lot of characters we've got. Also, one thing we have to talk about this movie is the soundtrack was phenomenal. If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure it was #1 on the U.S. Billboard top chart, which really was the first soundtrack ever to do that without any original music. And it was in the Grammys, too. I don't think it won, but I'm pretty sure it was nominated for Best Soundtrack.
It made an old song mainstream again. I still sing Hooked on a Feeling, like, just randomly. Ah! You know, you could just start that, and then someone else will join in with you.
Most people never knew these songs and now know them because of this movie.
Exactly. You know what I did want to mention, too, before I forget? I thought I screwed up, because I said Groot says, like, 4 words the whole movie. The big scene at the end, he says, "We are Groot," which is just super adorable and endearing anyway. And he, like, sacrifices himself to save everybody, which actually, James Gunn did say that Groot actually did die in that scene.
Yeah, this is a new version of Groot that we have now.
The new Groot that we have now is his son, which makes that movie better, but just, oh man, it's so sad now that you're like, oh, it's his son. So real Groot died in the first movie? Like, you don't ever get that, like a main character dying in the first movie that they're in.
Yeah, you don't think about it, because when you go forward watching it, if you don't think about that aspect, you think about, like, say, Infinity War Groot, where he's a teenager, and he's kind of being sassy and shit.
Yeah.
Would he be sassy if he had all that experience and old age and shit that the older Groot did in the first one? No, he wouldn't. This is obviously a new Groot.
That's a good
it's
point,
not the
actually.
exact same
because if he had the same mind and personality and stuff, he would have that. He would just, his body would be the only thing changing. So that would make sense if he had to start over from scratch. I'm okay leaving it at A just because of the Ronin stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with it now too.
So let's go down to Age of Ultron. This one we might disagree on too. I have this one at S tier.
You have it at S tier? Wow. I have it at B.
So just by the laws that we set in place, I'm going to put it at A, just as a compromise. I used to think it was the worst Avengers movie.
I did too.
But then after watching it in more recent years, it's just another example of perfect casting. The lines and the dialogue that they gave Ultron, it was one of the best villain portrayals in the MCU.
100%.
I feel like. Especially, you know, when he's going on his little rants and rambles, like that first scene when he comes out and he's barely put together and he's talking about, like, there are no strings on me anymore. This guy is an effing psycho. Like, Loki was nuts. This guy's bonkers. The things that he says to the Avengers over the course of this movie, that scene where they go to fight him in Wakanda, the one line that always sticks out to me, like when he's just talking to Captain America, pretending as if you could live without a war.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Just him getting so personal about it, but some of the things that he's saying are just true. That's what makes a good villain. Whenever you can kind of see their point or see why their motivation for what they're doing is halfway sort of believable.
He has a logic to his actions. You understand why he's doing it. He thinks that there is peace in an apocalyptic events. He thinks restarting is a good idea. He's wrong, but he does think he's right. He thinks this is the way to change humanity and change the world in terms of for the better. And yeah, it's just not the right way to go about it.
Just a lot of complex character development and stuff in this. Introducing, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver as well, and I'm also going to be excited to see if they try to link them to Magneto or not, or if they just kind of keep them, they kind of retcon that for the MCU or something. I'd just be interested to see how they introduce it, because Quicksilver's dead.
That's upsetting for me, because like
it is upsetting.
I wish they would have kept him.
I mean, he got his character development. It kind of happened really quick. It was almost like Billy in Stranger Things season 3. He just all of a sudden gets all of his character development in one scene, and it's a great scene, and it hits you in the feels. It happens a little quick, but I think it works. And then Scarlet Witch is, I'll argue, the most powerful character in the MCU.
I agree.
She ends up being a likable character, and, Elizabeth Olsen does a really good job. So we'll move on to Ant-Man.
Oof.
I have this at 8.
You have it at A tier?
Yeah.
I had it at A tier also.
Nice. Paul Rudd is a national treasure.
100%.
Luis is one of the funniest characters they've introduced so far.
They should recap the movies with him.
Yeah. They should release, on the DVD set, they should have him recap the entire MCU. Probably Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy are, the two movies that I can think of so far that do the humor really well, instead of being more serious. There's serious parts, obviously, but it's humor nonstop. Paul Rudd and Chris Pratt, no one's going to take them seriously because they're always in comedic roles. I mean, you almost have to craft the movie that fits their personality a little better, and I think they did a good job of that. Corey Stoll as Yellow Jacket was really good, and I was super into, there was a show on FX called The Strain. It's not that it should be this way, but I feel like sometimes when you act in a show versus acting in a movie, it's a little bit different in terms of the level of acting. I don't know, it's just a bigger scale in a movie. But he did an amazing job. He did a really good job of being a mentally unstable businessman. He was just so caught up in jealousy and rage and just trying to figure out this thing that this former business associate had screwed him out of.
He was definitely intimidating. For instance, the scene that stands out to me is whenever they're trying to hide those plans and he's talking to Hank Pym. And before that, his character, Darren, never gave you any reason to truly fear him yet. The way they filmed that scene, the way they did that scene was definitely terrifying. Oh shit, I hope they don't get caught.
Hank and Hope kind of say he's unstable and he's really close to figuring out the formula. Already a good setup for someone that you want to think is dangerous is they're already in a mental state that's not safe anyway, but then they're also about to figure out the thing that could be weaponized for horrible things. When he moves on to the live tests of the lambs, it just turns into jelly, and he's like, okay, bring out another one, and you're like, oh shit. So are you even going to change anything, or are you just going to keep trying this one and just seeing if it works just with a different lamb? That's the definition of crazy. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And he just has this deadpan, sociopathic look on his face when he says it. The thing that I like about movies where they introduce new characters like this is that each time you get a different set of abilities. Up until this point, nobody could shrink. Now Ant-Man can shrink. With all these different abilities in these different movies and characters, you can have a different kind of fight scene. So for Ant-Man, the characters can shrink, so they have these fight scenes where they're small, and then you show them in shots next to these normally small things, but all of a sudden Thomas the Tank Engine is the size of a normal train. There's just so many cool shots in that movie that you haven't seen yet before. Nobody really died. Yellow Jacket died. He shrunk to death. Not sure exactly how that ended up working.
Which I guess he died, but I guess you could make the argument.
He got crushed.
You could make the argument he's in a different universe.
Yeah, I feel like he got crushed to death, though.
I'm assuming he's dead, too, but if you really wanted to, if the MCU wanted to, I guess they could open up and be he just shrunk small enough. He's back.
Yeah, I think he's gone. And then, Anthony died. Anthony got shot by a bullet.
R.I.P.
And I was I've never been more sad about, a side character dying. And it's it was an ant. You don't think about an ant in everyday life. If you see one crawling inside, you're most likely going to kill it.
More than likely,
you don't want it inside your house. But that one dies, and then it's just because they humanize it. That was a bummer. I was pretty sad when that happened.
I agree. Overall, I think this movie was definitely really, really good. I think Ant-Man was a good comedic little throw-in movie that you essentially could watch without seeing the rest of the MCU, but it also makes a great addition to the MCU.
So that's it for Phase 2. The highs were high and the lows were low in Phase 2.
Yeah.
Nothing really in the middle ground. Alright guys, that does it for our video for Phase 2. We had a blast making this once again. We're excited to continue this series by diving into Phase 3 in the next video. So if you don't want to miss that, make sure you subscribe to Off Script, turn on notifications, go ahead and leave us a like on this video and leave your comments down below. We definitely want to know what you guys think about all our choices, and we want to hear your feedback for the channel. We can't wait to see you guys next time. We've been Off Script. That's a wrap.